with listening to the Waitangi Tribunal hearings, things coming through the community hearings, when the regional council gives so much water consents that the river ceases to flow, or so weakly that it can't sustain all the life that's in it, all the eels and all the fish and things like this, and all the insects that call it their home. And because of that, all the people that rely on those resources are left without, then we have taken too much. Tino Rangatiratanga is really about ensuring that the people who make this country our home do so in a way which in actual fact doesn't destroy the gift which is this country. And they call that today sustainability, but we could also call it tino rangatiratanga. You know? A rangatira isn't necessarily a person. You're not a rangatira because of your whakapapa. It's the whole arihi thing, the tuakana taina thing. You know, you descended from this ancestor, therefore you are the senior. Rangatiratanga, a rangatira becomes so because of the way he works with the people around him. That's where the Māori leadership system is a very strong one. If you go to Tonga and that, where the actual aristocracy is dominating. In New Zealand there's always been a dual thing, the actual aristocracy like Tūruti Heru, the paramount chief, or Tūheitia, you know, the Māori king. It's always been there, but the rangatira have always been those people who have in actual fact proved themselves because of their ability and their contribution. Mana whenua is your connection to the land. That because you have a connection that gives you rights and responsibility. A better term is ahika, because ahika means it's a living connection. You may have mana whenua because your parents lived in a place. You might have been born and bred in Sydney, but you've still got a connection to that area. But the people that we should most take notice of are those ones who still live there, who care for that place. And to my mind, a tangata whenua is a person who draws life from the land. You know, so if you live in a flat in Mount Maunganui, you're being tangata whenua. You can't grow cabbages in on the 11th floor of Twin Towers, or whatever you call those horrible buildings. But you can become a person who cares for that place, who walks the tracks and picks up the rubbish and pulls out weeds and supports people who are doing good things, the dune care people. The fact that hundreds of those people are right along that beach at Mount Maunganui are replanting the sand dunes with the plants that will protect them from the sea. I mean, that makes them in a certain sense tangata whenua, because they are actually drawing their life out of that land. And I think I have no time for academic tangata whenua who are very good with their mouths, who claim all sorts of rights because of their whakapapa, but who make no contribution to caring for the land that they have so much to say about. And I know we've got a lot of problems with that as well. You go to a marae, the people that who really are important are the ones who are actually looking after everybody else. And they're the ones that really need lots of support. So all of those sorts of things are just things for us to reflect on in terms of our belonging to places and our contribution we're making. You know, the gift of knowledge, it is a gift, and we only enjoy it when we give it away. You know, a person that knows a lot and gives nothing is not actually a knowledgeable person. I don't think so, and they're certainly not wise. I know fellas who are really big, heavy drug dealers. They weren't just little tin pot fellas. They are completely taken up with their belonging to the land. There's no drugs in their lives at all. And those are people who society said were irredeemable, you know. I've seen people absolutely transformed. I've seen people reconnect to their families that they haven't connected to for generations. I've seen people who have become grandparents without ever knowing their children, who now really know their families. And that's all, and not just Māori, but all sorts of people. And that's all because of the things that you know, I'm just highlighting at the moment. the other issue that is very, very strong to me is the, to use modern terminology, the depletion of biodiversity within the forest community because of the impact of pests, be they animal pests or weed species and things like that. And that's a big issue with our RONGOA Māori, and that's why I'm really pleased that when we get lots of nursery people on our courses, because the only way that we are actually going to keep RONGOA Māori alive is by preserving the whole range of species that used to live there. And if you want to really get a good understanding of that, there's a book authored by Bob Rocky, but reflecting people's research over 40 years in the Rongorongo Valley, up the back of Hutt Valley, called A Living New Zealand Forest. And it's about a 40-year study by scientists, originally DSIR and Forest Service, but now it's carrying on the top, on the impact of animal pests on that forest, and how over a succession of 40 years, how they've charted the disappearance of something like over half of the species that used to be in that forest. And that's just the trees. What's happening to the microorganisms? You know, so we really have to work on that. The other lot of research that's coming through more and more strongly is the role of microorganisms in terms of plant nutrition and in terms of the general health of the forest. One nursery, one of the biggest native plant nurseries in the country, Taupo Native Plant Nursery, people have been up there, sure, some of you have been there. Phil Smith is the manager of that nursery. He's also now the chairman of New Zealand Farm Forestry, the indigenous section of it. He's saying to me that he went over to the United States and he found that a lot of those nursery families have been going for hundreds of years growing plants in nurseries. And their practice is that they add soil from the areas that they're going to plant trees into their potting mix. And he's actually found that the trees that they grow like that, with a bit of local dirt added to it, actually do much better. They stand up to the heat in the summer much better. They stand up to the cold in the winter much better. And when you plant them up, they cope with the extremes. And we planted several thousand of those trees in a job I'm involved in. And the ones from Taupo Native Plant Nursery, right through a droughty summer, they've gone from this big to this big. And some from another nursery that had been in for 2 years died. You know, I was quite astonished at the difference. And basically, what he's saying is, there's a lot about soil and what's in the soil we don't know about. But let's not wait until we know about it before we start using it. Let's just mix our dirt into our soil. Most plants only can access their nutrients through the microorganisms in the soil. And that's why, see, they found out in Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia I think it was, that they were going to selectively log their forest. So the trees were at their mature, on the decline. They would take them out and nibble those and leave all the healthy trees. And then they noticed that their national bird, which was a type of, you know, used to build holes like a woodpecker type of bird. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but in the dead trees they started to disappear. And then they realised that if you take out all the old trees, the birds lose their homes, and therefore the birds can't be there to do their part in terms of controlling pests and spreading seeds. And so they had to modify that practice. See, we don't really know how all these things in our forest work together. So we're foolish to let these things go. We may be losing the essential ingredients. So one of our things that we've got to manage to do is care for all of the things that are in the forest, not just the kiwi and the kokako and all those special endangered things. They're just the symbols of all the other things that haven't got a voice. You know, like if you only look after the Prime Minister and forget the rest of Cabinet, you're never going to get very far. You know, because they don't cooperate. And you know, our icon species are only lighthouses to draw our attention to the big need that's underneath. You know, so that's why these pest control things, these replanting things, these maintaining the humus in the forest are all fundamental to the survival of things. And then going back to the RONGOA side of it, the old people have always said the only place to get your RONGOA from is in the forest, and they resent the planting of RONGOA. You know how it is with, you see a whole paddock full of echinacea, you know, whole paddock full of this, that and everything else like this. They've always said, no, you don't grow your medicines like that. You let them grow naturally and you take what nature provides. Now, that's not geared for mass production, but I think what they're actually reflecting is the fact that those plants grown in a natural setting do in actual fact bring with them a lot of other things that actually they have accumulated rather than the actual medicinal properties in the plant material. It's really interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
You know?
I don't know if anyone's read any of the Anastasia books, but in that book it's a lady in Russia who advocates that when you plant your vegetables you put them under your tongue for about a minute, the seeds, and the seeds will read your body and figure out what it is that you're lacking in, and will draw those particular minerals, not nourishment or whatever, nutrients up from the ground specifically in order to help you heal.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it.
So just read your vibration really. Yeah.
That's a very
So it's probably the same type of thing that when you put the soil from that particular area, it just lends its vibration to that plant's roots so that it's preparing it, you know, to go to that area.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way of looking at it, isn't it, really?
Mm.
You know, I had not heard that before. I was just a bit worried about these modern seeds that are coated in. Might not need too many vegetables on some of them. But at the same time, again, it gets back to saving your own seed, doesn't it?
Yes.
It'll be interesting if the issue, well, the global warming, you know, we've had some debate about that, but glaciation is one of the biggest spreaders of minerals and nutrients, because when the glaciers come through, they grind the rock, and there's been studies showing that the glaciation effect, you know, resupplies the land. When that dust from the glaciers blow over the land, it resupplies with the nutrients. Exactly. So now we're losing glaciers at a huge rate, and so what's that say for the land surrounding those glaciers and the broader area? That dust does blow for hundreds of miles. You know, if not globally, when you start thinking about how the winds carry things, it's going to have a real effect on ecosystems.
Well, they're actually finding the River Nile. The River Nile, traditionally, it would flood every year, and that would refurbish all the ground where people grew their food. And then they put that great big dam up there, huge dam, and that stopped happening.